Well, thank you everybody for joining here today. I am not Ted Sarvata. I am Preston Law. Ted got tied up here at the last minute, and I am sitting in for him. So thank you for joining, and happy Thursday. And I hope this is a good kickoff till the for the rest of your Thursday and into Friday and into your weekend. So we're here from Assured Strategy to talk about transforming your dreaded meetings into productive powerhouses. So I think, many of you today are probably, having some lunch or doing other sorts of multitasking during this meeting, and that's just fine. This picture that I have here, though, is probably the way that if people were really honest about what they were feeling in meetings, this is what it would look like. And certainly in our world of Zoom and Teams, a lot of this is probably going on in the background. So, what we really want in meetings is for things to look more like the people in this picture, where people are paying attention. The presenter is active in what they're doing, and you're actually getting something of value in our out of your meetings. So we're going to go through some things here that hopefully will help you out in getting out of the dreaded meeting world and into the land of things being more productive. And because, like, what could be better than having a meeting about being more productive in meetings on a Thursday, whatever time of the day it is in your part of the world. So a lot of this comes from three books by Vern Harnish that we use at Assured Strategy. And one of those is, and I have it right here as well, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. The other is Scaling Up, which is, they say, it's version 2.0 of Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. And there's also a revised version of Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, which I don't have because I have so many notes in this one. Some people are saying they don't see my screen. Cameron, can you still see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Well, we'll keep on going. Hopefully, Robin, you'll be able to figure out what the issue is on your side. So I'll put these books away up here on my bookshelf. And there's a couple other books that I just wanted to mention. One is Death by Meeting by Patrick Lencioni, which references some of these same tactics. And there's another one by Jeff Sutherland. If people know anything about software development, he's one of the inventors, so to speak, of the Agile Scrum methodology, and he mentions this same meeting cadence that we'll talk about today in that book. And there have been a lot of cross-referencing between Vern Harnish, Patrick Lencioni, and the work that he does at the Table Group, and from Jeff Sutherland in the work that he's done in Scrum. So this is not, what I'm about to show you is not like anything super unique to Assured Strategy. It's a widely known and widely practiced meeting cadence. So in the scaling up world, we talk about 4 decisions: people, strategy, execution, and cash. So people is, how do you have a harmonious culture of accountability? Strategy is about strong top line revenue growth. Execution is about converting that revenue to profit. And cash is about, we say, oxygen, having sufficient perhaps abundant cash to have options and make wise decisions. And when we talk about meetings, it's more of a focus on the execution side. So it's the ability to communicate well that having meetings should be enabling in your business. Okay. There's habits that John D. Rockefeller used to build, an operationally effective company, hence mastering the Rockefeller habits, that Vern Harnish has really adapted for mid-market growth companies. So when you're growing from like a couple of people in the office to a bigger group of people, communication is one of the things that kind of breaks down because you're not all together all the time, not a whole lot of people to involve, not a whole lot of areas of we say like playing telephone, which is the thing that we do in grade school where one person tells the next person tells the next person, and by the time you get to the end, it's what you said is something totally different. And this is in mastering the Rockefeller habits. There's actually 10 of those habits. And habit number 3 is that you have a communication rhythm that is established and information moves to the organization accurately and quickly. So that business of telephone is not negatively impacting your business, that you don't have conversations. Like my favorite question is, did you see my email? Like how many times have you been asked that question? Which email about what thing? What are you talking about? Or you're in some meeting, or you're asking an employee, or an employee's asking you what is going on with X, Y, and Z, and inevitably someone says, "Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I hadn't heard about that." And I can say I have been personally in a lot of those meetings. I've experienced that with some customers, multiple times in the last few weeks. So the communication rhythm really goes around, several different types of meetings. So the first is the daily huddle, which is a 15-minute meeting where the team that you're working on goes about, hey, what am I doing today? Where am I stuck? And so on. The second is a weekly meeting, which is more focused on what are we going to try to accomplish here in the next week? How are things going from a bigger picture? Then once a month, a monthly meeting where typically it's executive and middle managers meet for a day of learning, resolving big issues, and transferring information between departments. And then quarterly or annually, the executives and middle managers meet, preferably offsite, to go through where the status of the business is within those 4 decisions of people, strategy, execution, and cash. So I'm going to go through here that daily huddle, how that should work, weekly meetings, monthly meetings, the quarterly, annually, and then I'll give you a picture of how all of that should tie together. So habit number 3. Meeting rhythms becoming a regular part of communications. Okay. When we survey our clients in the beginning of our engagements, and we ask, well, what's the number one issue in your company right now? And more often than not, we see something surrounding communication. Doesn't matter what the size of the business is or what the industry is. There's always an issue with communication, and improving communication when you want to be growing your business at 20% or more per year is definitely the top item that we find across all of our customers. And I as a business owner and founder really experienced a lot of that myself. So the first thing that I mentioned before was daily huddles. So your daily huddle, if you're, other businesses or other methodologies call it, something else, a daily stand up. Okay. Uh, the thing that you're trying to do here is really synchronize the work across your team. Okay. What this speeds up your business, ensures teamwork, and helps people have that personal relationship with the rest of the team. As a lot of us are remote, or if you have a business where there's like a plant that's separate from the office, or your business has a number of different departments that have to work together, this daily huddle of the teams that are working together on projects is really going to help to establish that uh, feeling of teamwork. If people have issues or where they're stuck, it doesn't take a week or 2 weeks or even months at some times to get brought to the surface. You can really speed things up by having this done on a daily basis. So the huddle kind of goes like this: 5 to 15 minutes. Okay, going around to everyone on the team. What are they doing? Where are they stuck? Some people say, well, the questions are, what did you get done yesterday? What are you planning to get done today? And where are you stuck? Simple way to say that is, what's up? Daily metric. These are things like, hey, our throughput on the plant was, we had 97% uptime, and the throughput was 5,000 widgets were generated, and that's on track with what we expect. Or we could say, hey, we're stuck because although we had that amount of uptime, uh, there was a slowdown in one of the pieces of equipment, so we only got 5,000 done. We should have gotten 7,500, and we're going to have to replace that part, or that's going to be a repeated thing over the next month. So I'm stuck because that's a non-budgeted expense. Okay, the important thing here, and this is where I think a lot of people get get stuck in their daily huddle, is it should be quick, right? This is, if I go back to the last slide, huddles equals synchronization. We're not trying to solve problems during the huddle. We're trying to what we want to achieve is communication and synchronization across the team. Okay, it's not a place where we say, like, if you say, oh, I can't get that piece because it's an unplanned for expense. Well, at that time, we shouldn't try to solve the problem. The right answer would be for someone else on the team to say, let's talk about that after the huddle. And then you can go about solving that problem. Or you could ask a question like, do you have a solution on the horizon for that? But be careful in trying to actually solve that problem in your stand-up. Okay, does anybody here on the call do stand-ups or have have issues with them taking too much time?
Yes, I do daily stand-ups, and sometimes people wonder things solved right there, and I need to give up a check there. let's talk about it later. But yeah, it's a struggle some days.
Yeah, and thank you for speaking up here. You even with I would say a couple of the best teams I've worked on in my career, there is that not a week goes by where someone doesn't try to solve the problem in that stand up or in the daily huddle. And it's as someone who's running it, the team lead there, or whatever whoever the person is who's in charge of leading that huddle. um, that's part of the job is, okay, stop, you guys, we'll talk about that afterwards. What's next? Uh, I think one of the things that's been helpful is that in going into and starting to doing your huddles, give people permission to interrupt. Okay. Because again, this is synchronization, right? If people are getting off track and we want to be polite and let people finish their speaking and not interrupting, that's a good way to extend the time of the meeting without without any value.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I was to offer people one bit of advice on how daily huddles are going too long, just have an agreement between your team that it's okay to interrupt in a daily huddle. It's not being rude. It's helping us ensure the purpose of the meeting, which is synchronization. So
Okay.
if you're doing it, maybe that will be something that's helped. It was, a real watershed moment for me and a couple of teams that I've worked with.
Thank you for that tip.
So you're welcome. So the next meeting is the weekly meeting, and this one's 60 to 90 minutes. Um, and here it's reviewing quarterly priorities, uh, actually solving a particular issue. Okay, one of the things that comes up on the daily huddle could be something that you don't even need to worry about talking about right after the meeting, but putting it on a list of things that we're going to go over in the weekly meeting, which we call a Rios, and I'll share that in the next slide actually, and getting some customer or sharing customer and employee feedback. Now, the purpose here is that of the weekly meeting is we're going to see how the organization is performing functionally against our plan, and that we're going to spend some time solving some short-term or identifying long-term issues that are coming up for the business. So it's great if you have established this weekly meeting cadence, that's a great way in your daily huddle to say, hey, let's put this on the list as a Rios, is what we call it, for the weekly meeting. So even taking that issue that's, it's important, but it's not urgent. So if you're familiar with the Eisenhower matrix of, urgent, important, and where in the four quadrants your priority lies, it may not even be productive for people to talk about that right after the stand up, but to put it on the list for the weekly meeting. Okay, does that make sense? Because when you're taking those, one of the things with meetings is uh you're taking you're interrupting the actual work of the day with your meetings. So if you can have your daily huddle at the beginning of your day, now which can be challenging if people are across different time zones, it's more important to have it at a consistent time than necessarily at the very beginning of the day. And that way you have fewer interruptions of work during the day. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen this metric that, every minute of interruption takes 20 minutes for someone to get back on task. And those things that come up in the daily huddle, if they're not things that need to be looked at today, put them on your Rios list for your weekly meeting. Okay, now I've mentioned Rios a couple of times, so let me go through what this is. So the first is, what's the relevance of the issue? And you can think of the Rios as, hey, this is a list of things that we want to go over on a weekly meeting. It's rocks, opportunities, stucks, and what's the relevance of what you're talking about? And I actually review that Rios list for our assured strategy meetings, and I would say, in a very unscientific way, and historically, that about 30% of things that you on Monday thought were really important to talk about on that weekly meeting on Friday, when you get to Friday, it's no longer relevant, even though you haven't done any work or any thinking about it. The second thing is on your Rios is, be specific about what the issue you're talking about. Okay. The next thing is to address the root of the problem. Okay. Don't focus so much on what happened. Of course, you have to know what happened. You don't just say, well, I'm not going to tell you what happened. We're just going to talk about this thing. Of course, you have to know what happened, but think about more, what was the cause of that happening. The next thing is, I think, really important. Focus on the what was the problem and not who caused the problem. I was involved with a company before I had started with Assured Strategy, and we were going through this process, and the number one thing was, well, who messed that up? Who was the one person that caused this issue to happen? And the purpose that leader was trying to get to was, I want to make sure that I'm training that person. Was that person trained the right way? And so on and so forth. But no one really understood that. And as a result, they were putting out this message that, it was a blame game. Okay. And that's not a good thing. And Mary has a comment here. There may not be letting people know there may not be a resolution. And I think that's a good point, is we're going to address the root. We're going to, talk about the what happened. Okay. But we may not resolve it right now. But we want to make sure that we are addressing it. And rehab, yes, it's not about pointing fingers, but trying to figure out the solution. And when you focus on the what and not the who, it kind of takes away that tendency of pointing fingers. The next thing is, involve the people who are who are affected, as much as you can. They say when you point your finger at someone, there's these three fingers pointing back at you. So, involving everyone who's affected is really important. So, it's not the solution being, oh, so and so else has to do their job, and then this won't be a problem. And I also look at this like, hey, we should all just be, if we all focus on doing our jobs to the best of our ability, then you don't have to worry about other people doing their jobs because you can trust that they're doing their job to the best of their ability as well. Next thing is never backstab. Again, along those lines, uh, if there's something that comes up in that is a what from another department and they're not in the room at that time, they're not involved. Move on to the next thing. This could be, a time where, okay, the last step here is your next steps. So that next step could be, all right, we don't have everyone here who's affected. So we're going to stop talking about this. We're going to stop trying to solve this by making assumptions and thinking, okay, the assumption is something that's happening away from the people in the room is where the solution is. Stop, set up, go, say, now we need to get that other person here in our next weekly meeting and we talk through it then, or maybe it does have to be a separate meeting, but kind of thinking back on all of the separate meetings and going back to what I said about the daily huddle. Okay, there's all right. Why don't you two talk about it afterwards? And then why don't you two change that to be, instead of why don't you two people who are talking about it now talk about it afterwards? Why don't you come up with a Rios for us to discuss on the weekly meeting? And that will, just in that, you're saving several hours of work that day, or enabling several more hours of work that day, and getting the problem to be defined and put into a process to where a good solution involving everyone who's affected to be created. So I want to take a little bit of an aside here and talk about the 5 dysfunctions of the team. If you hadn't read this book or haven't read it recently, I couldn't recommend enough giving it a read or a reread, because this weekly meeting and that Rios process is not going to work well for you if you're experiencing the 5 dysfunctions of the team. 1, absence of trust. If you can't have that problem-solving discussion in in an environment of trust where everybody is focused on the solution, on the what part of that solution, right? Like, what's broken in our process that caused this to happen? The next is fear of conflict. I remember a story that I heard from an executive at actually GE, and he said when he had started, there was something that had gone on, and boy, these 2 department heads were just going at it. He was in a meeting. There was a tremendous amount of conflict between the 2 of them, and the meeting ended and they came up with a plan, but he was shocked. He said, wow, these guys hate each other. And then they had lunch together, and he was like, I thought these guys hated each other. And he actually had the courage to ask them the question. He says, "How can you guys be having lunch when you were like enemies in the conference room?" And they said, "We're not enemies. Okay, we just are going. We're not. We know we're not going to get to a solution unless we have that conflict." Okay, so they trusted one another to enough to know that they were going to be themselves and go at each other in the meeting and still be able to work together and commit to what they were doing. Okay, you have to be committed to following through. Okay, and also be accountable to what you committed to. So you have to have your trust, uh, be able to have conflict. Conflict isn't bad. Actually, without conflict, you're probably not going to have the best solution because people aren't going to speak up if they have a fear of conflict. People have to commit, which ties to accountability, and then really paying attention to the results, right? Like if we go back, if I come back to the other slide here, uh, next steps. Are we going to follow up on this or not? Right? If we're not following up on it, it's a waste of time. Okay, and there's not. There may come a time when you'll need to say to yourself or to your team, "Hey, having another meeting about this is a waste of time." Okay, we came into the meeting. These were things that everyone knew we were going to discuss. No one was prepared. We're moving on to the next item. And if people are saying, "Oh no, well it's really important," well, obviously it's not enough important enough for you to be prepared coming into the meeting. So we're going to move on to the next Rios on the list. And having the courage to say that is part of knocking down, a number of these five dysfunctions. So I hope that helps with a little bit of the problem solving piece of that weekly meeting. So I'm going to move on to the monthly meeting. So the monthly meeting is really should be held as soon as possible after financial results are available. And one of the really important aspects of this is having that cycle where we're seeing how the organization is actually performing against the goals. The other part of this is spending some quality time evaluating the progress of your quarterly priorities, making decisions, corrective actions. Maybe, this priority that we set up was too big to handle. Uh, Maybe we're just not making progress as much as we would want to. Do we still want to have it as a priority? What course adjustments do we need to make? And for each of those quarterly priorities, you should have a single person who's, accountable for this, who's on track of, the who, what, and when of getting that completed. And when we're talking about mid-course adjustments, it's about what is your corrective action to get that accountability back on plan. There can be so many different explanations, et cetera. But there's no excuse for someone coming in here and saying, "Oh, I don't know what the status of that is." It was what I had talked about before of on the Rios. If this is something that you're going to discuss and not prepared on it, it's not worth taking the time to discuss. Also, during this monthly meeting, you should devote time to one or two lengthier subjects that's either strategic or technical, operational in nature. So pick one or two items which will need some immediate wider level discussion, discovery, something that's taking shape as an obstacle or choke point, drill down on that with the intention of advancing solutions to remove the obstacle or the choke point before it really begins eroding or affecting your results. So, one question that one of my leaders would always ask was, okay, you're saying that the status is green now. Well, why? What's your indicator? And the next one was, can you see the finish line? And inevitably, someone would say, yes, I can see the finish line. He would follow up with, okay, tell me how you see it. So that's an important thing to think about as as you become the one or are the one in charge of one of your quarterly priorities, or the accountable person for your quarterly priorities. This is those are two questions that you should be asking yourself. It's on track. Why? And okay, people are getting things done. We had 10 items to do. We're halfway through the quarter and 5 of them are done. Can I see the finish line? Yes, we're 50% through, halfway through the quarter. Well, why? And this is where I would look at those remaining 5 items and say, do we actually have the time to complete those, and a plan with dates and responsible people to get those completed? So if you can't answer those questions, that's when you should be able to utilize the monthly meeting to go over that. Be honest, right? And say, this is the status. Great if you can come in and say, this is what I need. Or, look, some things can happen that are that could be completely out of your control. But I would always challenge people who say, oh, this is something that's not in our control, because this is the meeting where you should have everyone there who has things that are within the control. Things out of your control may be, socioeconomic things that are happening outside of your business. So the way that these all work together is they kind of add on to one another. So you have your daily huddle, weekly meeting, monthly meeting, and quarterly. So your daily huddle, again, is synchronization. Teams working together, teams working as effectively as they possibly can. Weekly meeting, solving some of your issues on a week-to-week basis, and then your monthlies, doing more of your bigger solving of where you're at in your quarterly priorities, and then quarterly, yearly, setting those priorities for each of those meetings. I'm sorry, for the quarter and for the year, not each of the meetings, each of those time boxes. So again, daily, synchronize. Weekly, focus and collaboration. Monthlies, learning and solve. Quarterly, priorities and critical number. And annuals, the strategize and plan. So if you're having experience where meetings seem to wander all over the place, they're not accomplishing what you need, Okay. This adjustment of having set meetings and set meeting times actually winds up being more efficient than having one-off discussions around the business and then saying, oh, we need to have a meeting. Oh, who should be here? Before you know it, there's uh 50 different uh 50 different things that you're sorry, 50 different people who you want to invite. There's not really any thought around it. You have this meeting for you set it for an hour, and the first 30 minutes are spent trying to explain why we're having the meeting. And by the time the next 20 minutes go by and people ask questions, then at the last 10 minutes of the meeting, you're actually starting to get stuff done. And the last action item is typically, let's have another meeting. So this rhythm helps you get out of that And yet someone asked, are the slides available? Yeah, we can make the slides available, as well as I think we can give the recording of the meeting as well. But yes, we can get you a copy of these slides. Um, so getting back to here and just doing a little bit of a review daily. I said it a bunch of times. I'll say it again. Daily synchronization. Okay. Uh, you don't solve problems there. Solve problems best way, putting it as a Rios for the weekly meeting. Second best way is having a meeting with the people involved, right after the daily huddle. Your weeklies, again, focusing, collaborating, monthly, doing some more learning. It's, that learning piece is usually the first thing that people who are implementing this process throw out. Like, oh, I don't have enough time to learn how to do anything better because I'm too busy doing it the way that I'm doing it now. Okay. So if you say it to yourself like that, and if you or say it to your coworkers like that, typically that motivates me myself. I have to do that to myself all the time, but it also motivates your coworkers and your business to take up some learning. Quarterly, setting your priorities for that next quarter, working on what your critical number is. This quarterly, I like to say, is kind of all about the numbers and your plans for the next quarter. And I would say one of the really important things about this quarterly meeting is it needs to take place before the quarter starts. Okay. Your quarterly meeting for Q1, if you're on a calendar year, should not happen the second week of January. Okay, that should be happening the first week of December, and so on. And then your annual, 2 days offsite strategy. What are we going to try to get done in the next year? What's in our way? Where are our financials? What are new business opportunities? Where can we go? Get better at doing what we're doing for our existing business opportunities, and so forth. And in that meeting, in those, your quarterly and especially annual meetings, when you do set the priorities, make sure that you're using the the SMART goal setting methodologies. So things need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. Okay. We need to be very specific about what we're trying to achieve. How are we going to measure that we achieved it? Okay. And from those two things, Is it attainable? How is this relevant to our business? Okay. And in the relevancy, it may be that, oh, wait a minute, how is this relevant to our business? Well, uh, it's relevant to a particular department, or it's always something that I've wanted to get done and I haven't gotten time to do it. Well, that's not relevant. The relevance is, how is this going to impact your critical number? How is this going to impact your profitability? How is this going to increase your revenue? Those sorts of things are questions to ask if to ensure that it's relevant. And then timely, some people say timely, some people say time bound for the T. So, you can't say, well, I'm not sure when it's going to be done because, this, that, and the other thing are going to come up, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to it, et cetera, et cetera. That's not time. That's not being timely or saying someday. Timely means a specific date. Okay. And by specific date, that's not by the middle of January. It's not a specific date. January 15th is a specific date. Okay. And if you have your measurements, those things should be able to be periodically measured, or, measured on a weekly and monthly basis, ideally daily, but a lot of things you don't see enough fluctuation day to day to make that uh, a good measure, at least weekly. And then by that time, this is the change that we want to accomplish. So the elephant in the room in all of these, okay, the elephant in the room here is, are you actually going to do this, or just give it lip service? Okay. The biggest thing here is that there's not brutal honesty and a culture of there's no shame and there's no blame. Okay. At Assured Strategy, we achieve what we achieve by asking hard questions and challenging beliefs. Hard question is, are you really in a place where you can bring a problem to the room, and you're going to get challenged in a healthy way and in a productive way, and come up with a solution in a healthy and productive way? So that's, a big thing that we do day in and day out with our customers here at Assured Strategy. So that's pretty much the end of my spiel. I do have a question here, which is great, and it popped up. I need to get to where I can see it. So Vanessa was asking, who are the appropriate attendees for each of the meetings? So your daily huddle is a team that works, that's working together. Okay. So a lot of times if you're a manager, that's your direct reports. If there's a project in the business where multiple teams are working on towards the same outcome, it would be, depending on the size of the team, representatives of that team. You can use the pizza. What is it? I call it the pizza thing. So, don't have more people in your daily huddle than could share a pizza. So, somewhere like 7 is a good number. If you think about it, like if you have 15 people in your daily huddle, are you going to really get through it in 15 minutes? So it should at least be representation of those teams. And a lot of businesses, and we recommend this, have different levels of uh, daily huddles. So you could have your, people in the factory, people in HR, uh, people on your leadership team, sales, all the different departments there in the daily, the weekly, more at a departmental level, and then the monthly and quarterly are your management and top level leaders. And I guess Mary, you had a question. I see your hand is raised.
Yes, I did have my hand raised. I think a lot of what you've said resonates really strongly with me based on the need for these type of meetings and the push with the SMART goals. But one of the things that I haven't heard you address is how do you deal with people that hijack your meeting? When you have those persons that have an axe to grind, regardless of whatever the situation may be, and they're laying
Mhm.
in wait until any meeting is held, and they kind of like pounce as
Yeah.
soon as they get the opportunity. And it's like, they go back to you not approving their PTO or not giving them the raise they were hoping for, and
Hmm.
then you have to try to write that meeting back again.
Well, yeah, of course, that's never happened to me in 30 years of business. uh, and yeah, I kind of go back to my thing from before was, having that rule, especially in the daily huddle, that, we can interrupt, right? Interrupt with a purpose. Okay. Cutting that person off. Um, the, I only have like 5 minutes here. But we do have some free offerings on our website, and one of those is a coaching session. So if you'd like to sign up for that, we can discuss that more in some detail. Um, it a lot of that comes down to but I'll just say this: a lot of that comes down to the five dysfunctions of the team, and being honest with that person. And at some point there has to be a time when you have to not be polite to that person, because they're not being polite to the team. They're not adding any value to the meeting. Okay. And having that, being able to have that conflict and that honesty with them and say, look, we're not talking about that right now. So you can either be in the meeting or you can leave. And that's a tough thing to do. Okay. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh yeah, 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 do that. That is like really, really uh I would say it's really a tough thing to do. But man, I would say 100% of the time when I challenge that person, especially in front of the team has risen to really come together, because everybody's thinking, no one wants to hear that, right? And that person is really being a detriment to the team. But yeah, sign up, um, and we can do that. Have more of a talk around it. Um, Rehab is saying, in the meetings themselves, what is the structure? What is the agenda? And part of that is that Rios list that I discussed. And there is more information about doing that within the scaling up book. And we do have some other tools for that rehab, and where we have what is the agenda for those weekly and monthly meetings, and we have some other tools that we can make available to you. So if you reach out by email just to info@assured strategy, I think it is, or on the next slides here, and you'll get a follow-up email from us too. That'll have this contact information, and then Ted can get you some of these tools. And if you're not sure which tool you're actually asking for, you can just say, "Hey Ted, I don't know. I was asking Preston on the call, and we'll get it out to you." Okay. Just another quick thing before we have to wrap up. We do have some other webinars, workshops. If you're, in the Denver, Fort Lauderdale, or San Antonio areas, or are able to get there at any of these dates that are coming up, that's great. This meeting rhythm is something that we talk about in those scaling up workshops, and then a couple of cash webinars and things about pricing are coming up as well. Again, assuredstrategy.com/events, and of course, reaching out to Ted, and you'll be getting a follow-up email from us as well. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the questions. I've done a lot of these webinars, and the group here was excellent with questions and comments and sharing. Really appreciate you taking your time. Happy Thursday, and have a great weekend if we don't talk before then. Thank you so much.